If you feel too much anger or suppress the freak out of it, this episode is for you. I'm gonna explain why this is the result of childhood programming and that there is nothing wrong with you for feeling it. It's just your personality. It was a survival strategy in your childhood that helped you before, but right now might not work anymore. I'm Karolina, the Connection Catalyst, and this is episode 5 of the Connection Catalyst podcast, where we're going to talk about Enneagram Action Triad 8, 9, and 1. So we're going to start with number 8, the boss, the challenger, the protector. Their core motivation is to control everything because they have a big fear of losing control. They feel like control will give them safety, and they feel that they need to protect themselves and others, especially from vulnerability, from injustice, from harm. Type 8 is motivated by the need to feel strong, powerful, autonomous, and self directed. In my view, they actually control way too much, and it's the most controlling personality of all Enneagram when they are unhealthy, of course, because we're going to talk about unhealthy traits of the 8 and other types mainly, as I said before. But they are really afraid of being weak and powerless and of the mercy of someone else. That's why they try to overpower, to hide this fear, and to hide the powerlessness under this cover. Type 8 believes that if they stay in control, if they stay strong, they won't be hurt. That's why if there is a vulnerability that comes up, they might suppress it and deny it and disown it, and they might also reject it and resist it in other people. So for them to be sad, for example, and held is very hard. So they feel like they need to guard themselves, and they are very scared of losing autonomy. But let's talk about the good traits of an 8 as well. So, 8s are really strong, very decisive, very protective. If they are in the good, let's say, vibe, they really care about their friends and family and close people. They can be very loyal in this case. They are very direct, usually very honest in healthy ways. 8s are really able also to take charge in a crisis. So, for example, if someone is suffocating, they are going to stand up and provide first aid straight away because they are action takers. We are in the action triad now. But it comes also with the shadow side. So, they might have control issues. And I'm talking when I was with a man who was an 8, calling me every few hours, like, where are you? What time are you going to be back? Like over controlling. They can be very intimidating. They can be very aggressive. They can be super angry, nervous. They can be very dominant and just like not in a good way. They can just tell you what to do. They can be very suppressed emotionally, and they can be difficult in trusting, like both ways. I mean, they might have difficulty trusting others, but we also have difficulty trusting them because of their controlling and dominant nature. And they have fear of the softness, of the vulnerability, as I mentioned before, which then actually creates or might create some kind of distortion in the relationships because they don't really connect from their heart, but they would connect more from the action and show their love by doing stuff for other people, or by intellectually talking about things, or by giving some material things, but not really by connecting to the heart. And for a woman, for example, who is with an 8, it might be quite a difficulty because we are emotional. We need the man to also be with us, be present, and be emotionally attuned to us. But if you are an 8, a man, you're just getting shit done. And this is usually how you show your love. And you're very protective, right? So, for example, my father would show me love because he's an 8, wing 7, by first of all managing things for me, protecting me always, handling the apartment for me, or food, or like stuff, buying me things. But I didn't get much vulnerable things from him. For example, hugs, or deep conversations and things like that. Because 8s are often scared of it so much that they literally can't handle it. For example, they can't look you deeply in the eyes for prolonged periods of time. If we are in the shadow side, of course. So, as we know, the action triad has the emotion of anger, and how it displays in number 8 is that this anger is often externalized, projected outwards, and acted out, and actually used to take action. So, they are channeling their anger, their frustration, and so on to do shit. And it gives them the sense of aliveness and also of control, which they love, and also protects them from feeling the vulnerability, because anger is always a cover up emotion for fear, for powerlessness, for sadness, for shame, for hopelessness. So they are utilizing this force, this anger, to drive them to do some stuff. And I'm gonna share a funny story here of how this control and anger can play out in life. So once I was on a trip with my brother and his girlfriend, who is an eight, and they were like chilling, and I was preparing food for them. So she was so angry that I'm cutting the onion not as she wants, because I was cutting it in my way. And she was so pissed that the onion is not going to be cut as she wants. And I was on purpose telling her, hey, I'm cutting this onion exactly not as you wanted to. I'm cutting it in this and that way. And she was so frustrated with this because she needed to even have control over how the onion is prepared. And it's pretty interesting because when I served the onion with the dumplings, she actually liked it and she was like, oh, this is perfect. But because she wasn't there looking at the onion and preparing it herself, and she wanted to be in control, she was like so frustrated that the onion is not going to be exactly as she wants. And this is a funny example, but this can play out also in very unhealthy ways in the life of a number eight, because they might be very controlling of their partner, like they might lock their partner in the house and tell them to not work and not see friends, and they can be quite jealous, and like they can be possessive in this way, because control, of course, can play out in many different ways, in terms of possessiveness, in terms of economic abuse, in terms of many different other areas, right? And because the eights like to control stuff so much, they are future focused, because they are thinking now, okay, what could happen in the future that I could prevent? How can I control my outcomes? So in their minds, they would have already like plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And then how to secure my power, my strength, my autonomy ahead of time. So they might act in the present to dominate the future. And there's a lot of jokes about Enneagram 8. I have a love-hate relationship to this Enneagram, but actually I love 8s when they are healthy. It's just a challenge to be around them when they are not healthy, because 8 doesn't have any authority apart from their own, because they were so hurt in childhood that they felt like the only safety that they can find is within themselves and by controlling things and controlling their environment to suit to them. And they are doing it in the best, let's say, intentions. So I'll give you another example. I have this friend who is an eight, and we were on this party, and she came to this guy and she was like, oh my God, how do you look? You should take this shirt off your pants. Like, the ladies are not going to be drawn to you if you look like this, and so on. So she was saying it in a very intense and direct way, but her intention was good. She wanted him to look good so that the girls are attracted to him, right? But she said it in such a way that he actually like contracted inside. You could see on his face, he was just like, what the hell is going on? And he was just like, withdrawing and so on. But she genuinely thought that she is doing it for his sake, right? With a good intention. Because eights genuinely think that they are right and others are wrong, and that their path is the best path, their idea is the best idea. So if they impose their idea onto you, you're gonna have it the best, right? So they are controlling you to do as they say because they genuinely think this is like the best for you, which is kind of funny, but this is how it plays out. So pretty much the boss controls you because they like you or even love you. Now let's go into how they act in stress and in relaxation. So let's look at the graph. When the boss is under stress, they become like an unhealthy type 5. What does it mean? They can disconnect emotionally completely. They can withdraw. They can become secretive or isolate or really overthink everything. But on the other hand, when the type 8 is in comfort, so in growth, they become the best number 2, so the best possible giver. And this is great because then they become empathetic, emotionally available, they can soften, they can express their care and tenderness, they can allow for interdependence, which they can't do when they are not in relaxation. They can lead with the heart, not just power and strength. So in this case, the true power becomes the protective love instead of control. When it comes to Hornevian groups, type 8, together with 3 and 7, is the aggressive slash assertive type because they move towards what they want. They can put their boundaries in place really strongly. They can take up space. They can meet life heads on, and they can avoid vulnerability through action and control, getting shit done. So, because they want to stay strong, right? They want to stay in control. So, the type 8 might be sometimes challenging to be with. That's why maybe they are called the challenger. But if the type 8 grows in terms of connecting to their emotions, connecting to their vulnerability, expressing it, caring, and being really in the more giver Enneagram type when they are under relaxation rather than stress, they are really amazing people, real sweethearts. But sometimes they put so many layers of this protection, so many heart walls, so many internal protectors as their parts that you can't really see what's beneath. But these types were really, really hurt in childhood, so I'm not surprised that they act like that. And because number 8 is so controlling, they can be quite stubborn, especially when they are 8 wing 9, because 9 can be quite stubborn as well. Sometimes the 8 wing 9 is called the bear. But 8 wing 7 is more like the party animal and takes up a lot of space. Like for example, my dad, when he's in the environment of friends, he's like the loudest and takes up all the space and a good leader of the party, doing funny shit and so on. So, yeah, there are different flavors of Enneagram 8. And remember that depending on the wing, the 8 wing 7 might display a bit different traits than 8 wing 9. But the core fear, the core wound, the core motivation is the same. And by the way, because I was talking in the previous episode about the type 7 who is prone to different addictions, 8 wing 7 also can be prone to addictions like drugs, alcohol, partying, whatever it is, because they are avoiding vulnerability. It means that they are suppressing the shit out of their emotions and then they are coping with it in ways that are external to them, right? So, especially for type 7 and wing 7, people might be prone to these addictions. And because the 8 is so suppressed in their emotions and vulnerability, this can be also the case for them. Now let's go into the Enneagram number 9, the Peacemaker, the Mediator. As the name indicates, they just want to maintain inner peace and harmony and balance and relationships with others by avoiding conflict, tension, or disconnection. So their fear is to experience the loss of connection or just the conflict, right? They really feel disconnection and inner turmoil. So they sometimes think that, oh my God, there's already so much pain in the world. Like, I don't want even more conflict, even more pain, because they feel like maybe they don't have capacity to handle it. And they really just want peace, want it easy, right? They don't want any confrontation. That's why they think, okay, if I stay easy, agreeable, and I just don't cause any troubles, everything will be okay. Everyone will be harmonious, right? So their essence is like receptivity and presence because they are used to preserve peace and avoid disruption. So the good traits of a 9 is that they are calm, they are grounded, they are very accepting, they are empathetic, right? Because they are the mediator. They are able to see all different perspectives and find a win-win scenario between people. They are harmonizing, they are very good space holders, right? And they don't really force their outcomes. But it also comes with the shadow side of being passive, being merged with the other person to the degree that you don't really know who you are because you want to please them so much, just like the Enneagram 6, like me, or 2, like a giver can do. And they can be emotionally numbing themselves, they can be procrastinating, they can be kind of lazy, they can forget about themselves for the sake of others, like they can really have difficulty asserting their needs or boundaries, and they have resistance to change. They really like routines and doing the same things, let's say every day, or going to the same places, or watching the same TV series, and things like that. My friends and family members who are 9s in relationships, when they were unhealthy, they literally lost themselves for the sake of their partner. So their partner's life became their life. And they were super, let's say, moldable, and their partners were able to control them completely. That's why oftentimes 9 can attract someone like an 8, like the boss, or like the 3, the leader, right? Because these personalities go hand in hand. 9 is more of a people pleaser, and the leader, the boss, are more of the directing force. So that's why the 9 needs to really take care of their own needs, their own boundaries, and get to know themselves on such a deep level that then when they are in connection to someone else, they already know who they are, and they are not compromising their own center, their own values, their own needs for someone else. That's the area of growth for Enneagram number 9. And Enneagram 9 has a very peculiar connection to their anger because they suppress the shit out of it. This anger is minimized, is numb, is turned inward because they can't cause conflict, so they can't put it outwards, right? So oftentimes, how it works with the 9 is that they build up this anger, build up the frustration and irritation and everything. And at some point, they can't hold it anymore. So they just burst with it everywhere, right? So, yeah, it is very dangerous because it threatens connection. So it becomes quiet. It might be displayed as passive aggressiveness, for example. The mediator can be this person who says, "Oh, I never feel angry." But they are suppressing so much of it because keep in mind that both of their wings, 8 and 1, are anger based. That means that a 9 is completely anger based. That's why they have a lot of it. But because they are so scared of expressing it to not disrupt their inner harmony and balance and outer harmony and balance, they just don't have a good relationship with it. So it's very important as a 9 to see your own anger and to express it in a healthy way. The 9 is past oriented because they tend to orient towards what feels familiar because this brings them safety. As I said, they like routine and so on. What has worked before and what can I do to maintain the existing comfort and stability that I feel right now? But the 9 can also express it in unhealthy ways. For example, someone hurt them in the past and then they can't let it go for like 10 years. They are always remembering, oh, these people have used me in the past. Oh my God. And they don't really go into their emotions and anger and resentment. They don't fully release it from their body. So they might think of the past and not let it go for prolonged periods of time and not really forgive people for causing harms to them in the past. The peacemaker can have very beautiful qualities in relationships, being really loyal, really steady, really accepting, accommodating, safe, and so on. But on the other hand, as I said, they can lose themselves. They can really project their anger when they burst finally. They can be passive aggressive. They can struggle with initiating difficult conversations or just escape from them completely. They might struggle to stay engaged during conflict and, as I said, unconsciously just merge with the other person and lose themselves. I have this example from my own life when the man number 9, mediator, was with the woman number 8. And because he cheated on her, because he couldn't express his needs in a relationship and his boundaries and so on, so he coped with his unmet needs by betraying her, she actually took all the money from their common bank account that they got after selling the apartment that he got from his parents, and she just took it and he didn't do anything about it. He didn't even fight for it because it's the peacemaker. He didn't want a conflict. He didn't want to go to the court and fight for it, right? So this can be very unhealthy, even though he has a right to this money because it's the gift from his parents. She just took it all and he didn't want problems. So he was just like, okay, I feel guilty, so I'm just giving it all away to you. So yeah, 9 can be quite unhealthy in relationships sometimes. And this also links to the Hornevian group of number 9, which is the withdrawing type. Right? So they pull back from direct engagement and they conserve their energy and they avoid the confrontation, as I said. So they manage tension by disengaging. Unfortunately, most 9s are people pleasers, just like 6s and 2s. And anyone who has the wing like this could be also a people pleaser. And therefore, they might have a lot of tendencies for lack of self worth, self doubt, not feeling good enough, and things like that. But let's talk about how they act in stress and in comfort right now. So let's look at the graph. Under stress, type 9 would display the most challenging traits of type 6, which is quite unfortunate because I'm a 6 and I know what I'm talking about. So then the mediator becomes anxious, overthinks a lot, worries about what could go wrong, and sees all the most negative scenarios of each situations and thinks that it's actually going to happen, becomes indecisive, doubting themselves, and seeks lots of reassurance. So their calm can collapse into inner doubt. But when they are in growth, the peacemaker can access the best traits of number three. What it means, they become assertive, they become good leaders, they can have a lot of motivation and drive and take initiative. They can claim their desires, express them, and show up visibly in the world. So they learn that self expression does not necessarily destroy connection. And when it comes to the wings, Nightwing 8 will be more out there, expressing their anger outwardly, and Nightwing 1 would be more inwardly, because type 8 is completely different than 1. So if you see Nightwing 8 and Nightwing 1, it could be a bit different personality, but still their core is similar. So let's go into 1 so that you can more understand how Nightwing 1 would also work. Type 1 is the perfectionist, or in other words, the reformer. Their core motivation is to be good, to be right, and they have this feeling that there is one right way to go, and I need to go this way. They are aligned with their inner standards, sometimes way too high standards, and they constantly want to improve themselves to be perfect, right? Because they feel like they need to be perfect. And they are motivated by the need to live with integrity and correctness, because they feel like, okay, if there's only one right way, I need to be correct in this one right way. And they want to avoid the moral failure or kind of inner corruption. So the core fear is to be bad or wrong, or to be a failure or unethical. So, in some way, they fear being flawed and deserving of blame or criticism because, yeah, they are very critical of themselves. They have a massive inner critic usually. And sometimes they can struggle with it because if they want things to be perfect, they might have challenges to, for example, launch their product because it's still not perfect, right? And they really believe that if they do things the right way, they will be safe, they will be okay. So they always want to take responsibility and moral clarity as well to control the anger and to prevent chaos or wrongdoing, and they take action towards it. So, because they are the reformers, they always want to do good and to change the world for the better. They can be very responsible, very ethical. They might be the politicians of the world, right, that want to change something in here. They are very organized, very fair, very committed to improving themselves and the world. They can see what is there still to improve. They have a lot of good principles and they have a lot of integrity and structure to whatever they do. But the shadow side of it is they can be quite controlling. They can be very critical of themselves and then project it outwards to the others as well. They can be very rigid. They can be a perfectionist, like having OCD or, having things their way, because otherwise they don't feel safe. And it doesn't mean perfectionist in the sense that everything in their life is perfect or clean. Their perfectionist might be displaying in areas like, okay, I'm going to be really good at my studies, for example. I used to date a guy who was a perfectionist and he wanted to become a politician and change the world. He was waking up at 5 a.m., meditating for an hour, going to the gym, then eating, then going to the uni and staying there until like 9 p.m. because perfectionists might be sometimes workaholics as well. And he really felt like, okay, I'm here on the mission. I'm here to change the world, right? So they can be very committed to improving the life of others, which is very beautiful. But at the same time, they can be, for example, chronically dissatisfied with what is right now. Or they might be inflexible, right? Because this is my schedule, this is how I work, this is what I want, and I don't have any flexibility around it to, for example, spend more time with you as a partner. Yeah, so that was a challenge for me because my love language is quality time and I barely spend time with him. And then we decided we are just incompatible because like he can't meet my needs as a loyalist who's love languages are quality time and physical touch. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So their shadow side comes when the correctness replaces the compassion. And when it comes to the emotional pattern, As we know, for this triad, the action triad, the emotion is anger. And how it shows up in the perfectionists is they are very controlling and especially controlling themselves. They are internalizing this anger. So they like direct it inward, right? So for example, they are frustrated that they still haven't done all the things that they wanted to do. And they can convert into resentment or irritation towards themselves or others. So anger is also seen as wrong by the perfectionist. I mean, our whole society thinks that anger is wrong, right? So we tend to suppress it. So then it becomes self criticism for the perfectionist and also the moral tension. In relationships, the perfectionist could be very committed, very responsible, very loyal, very dependable, very fair, but also they might have the anger issues, right? Because they don't express the anger directly and they might actually struggle with relaxing and with like letting go of control because they want things to be as they want it to be, right? As they should be in the right way. And they struggle to accept imperfection in the other person as well, as I said before. And they don't allow things to be not good enough. So the love might feel like a project to do where everything needs to be perfect instead of a beautiful experience. When it comes to time orientation, the perfectionist is present focused because they are scanning what is happening right now, what can I improve in this moment, what is wrong, what needs to be corrected immediately, right? And whether their behavior is righteous right now, whether they are aligned with their moral values right now. So they can have thoughts like, oh, this isn't right, or this needs to be fixed, or do better now. So let's look at how the perfectionist acts when it comes to the growth and the discomfort. In the stress pattern, the perfectionist takes on the worst traits of the artist. What does it mean? They can become really moody, really like a drama queen, quote unquote, emotionally reactive, self absorbed, discouraged, and they can feel really misunderstood by everyone. So the structure collapses into the emotional intensity, and they can become depressed or even suicidal when they are too much in stress because artists, as I said before in my previous episodes, are the most, let's say, depressing and like suicidal type of the whole Enneagram. But in the comfort pattern, in growth, the one becomes like a healthy seven. What does it mean? They can relax, they can allow joy and spontaneity, they can become playful and release the rigidity, and they can trust life way more. So they learn that goodness does not really require constant effort. When it comes to the Hornevian group, type 1 is the compliant type. Why? Because they always follow what's right. What's the standard? What am I obliged to do? What is my duty? What is the rule, for example, right? And they seek correctness and approval, but also from themselves, not always from the outside. And they manage anger by controlling themselves. So they always think unconsciously what is the right thing to do. And I will tell you this story about the Enneagram one because they are such action takers. My best friends lived with a lady who was the perfectionist, and the lady said, "Oh, you should make another key to the house." And because they were two of people and they needed an extra key so that each person has one for themselves. But they were lazy to do it. And after a week, when they didn't do it because they were just like swapping the key, the one key that they had, this lady actually went and made the key for them because she couldn't handle how long it takes for them to take action to make this extra key, which is pretty funny. But the perfectionists are very, very good at taking action, as we say, action triad, right? If they are a one wing nine, they might procrastinate a bit because of their nine wing, but one wing two would take more action. And talking about all these types, you can really see that depending on the wing, the perfectionist might also act differently. And when it has the wing nine, it will have more anger. And when it has a wing two, because we are going into the emotional triad now, it might have more shame. So now, just to visually represent the time orientation so you can remember, I will show you this graph from Pinterest that I found with time orientation. So as you can see, 1, 2, and 6 are oriented in the present. 9, 5, and 4 are oriented in the past. And 8, 7, and 3 are oriented in the future. Looking at this graph, it's easier to remember visually because this looks like a beautiful harmonized mandala. In the future, I might give you even more examples of how different Enneagram types play out when I'm going to be talking about different situations from life in relationships, because this podcast is a lot about relationships to ourselves and also to others. But for now, this was already a lot of information to take in. And remember that if you resonate with the different types of Enneagram, it doesn't matter because your core wound and core motivation and core fear is always the same. So when you do the test online, remember that your type doesn't change over life. So do it correctly. I was talking about it a few episodes ago in Introduction to Enneagram, how to do the test correctly, so that the Enneagram type that you actually have in the results is the one that is yours. If you have any questions about Enneagram, feel free to comment below. Send it to someone that you might feel like they are type 8, 9, or 1, or maybe if you are this type, so that you can understand you even better. And if you want to contact me for anything like private session or mentorship or whatever else, you can find me on karolinakuraj.com. KarolinaKuraj.com. I'll put the links below in YouTube and Spotify. And for now, thank you so much for being here with me, listening, and see you in the next episode.